the cameras flash, the crowd, I mean, they just kind of froze. And honestly, just like that, Hollywood had a brand new obsession.
Oh, absolutely. It's the ultimate pop culture mystery right now. We're
Yeah.
talking about why Eric Roberts was completely missing from his daughter Emma's incredibly star-studded wedding.
Right. So welcome to StarScope Report.
Yeah.
Join Jordan and Jamie as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and, viral influencer scandals.
Exactly. From red carpet surprises to major social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today's deep dive is, well, it's a really wild one. Our mission today is to unpack this specific, glaring absence at one of the biggest weddings of 2026.
Yeah, and we are pulling from a massive stack of sources for this. We've got the exclusive wedding coverage from Vogue, some really deep dive pieces from Page Sense and Us Weekly, plus, and this is the big one, some startlingly raw excerpts from Eric's own 2024 memoir, Runaway Train.
Oh, and those podcast interviews he did recently.
Hmm.
So if you are insanely curious about pop culture and, really complex family dynamic, you are in the right place. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. So picture this. July 25th, 2026.
Okay.
Emma Roberts, who's 35, and Cody John, 36, tie the knot. And they've been dating for about 4 years at this point.
Right.
They get married at Cody's family ranch up in Sun Valley, Idaho. And every single detail, according to Vogue, was just a masterclass in hypercuration.
I mean, even the lead-up was like a movie. Vogue mentioned they were set up on a blind date back in May 2022 by their mutual friend Jeff Ward.
Oh, yeah. Cody had this whole elaborate Friday night planned out with reservations all over LA.
Which is so much pressure.
So much pressure. And Emma actually got nervous and was like, let's scale this back to early Tuesday drinks at Edendale.
Which is totally fair.
Right. But then that casual drink organically turns into this massive 8-hour marathon first date. Yeah. And then 2 years later, the proposal happens. So Emma had apparently spotted this gorgeous but totally unavailable 1930s silver ring box at a vintage store in Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay.
And Cody somehow manages to secretly buy it.
Stop. That's incredibly sweet.
It is. He proposes back at that same Idaho ranch, and he presents her with this vintage round diamond in that exact box. She's barefoot in jeans, they're playing gin, drinking champagne by a pond, making turkey burgers.
See, that sounds so grounded. Like, it's private, it's messy in a charming way. It's just very real. But then, you flip to the actual wedding itself.
Right.
Working with Heather Miner Events. And it is a completely different atmosphere. It is relentlessly styled. I mean, for the rehearsal dinner, Emma wears a 2002 Richard Tyler baby blue dress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The welcome party at the top of a mountain features a 2006 Pierre Cardin runway look. And then there's the wedding dress.
The Monique Louyer gown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she specifically requested that it not be traditional white. She wanted an antique tea-stained white because, as she literally told Vogue, she wanted to look, quote, like a ghost in photos.
Which is such a specific, almost haunting phrase. That's where the psychology really leaks through the styling, I think.
But wait, I have to push back a little here. I mean, lots of brides want a vintage aesthetic. Are we reading too much into a fashion choice? Like, it could just be a Pinterest board come to life.
I mean, in a vacuum, sure, maybe. But when someone with a historically fractured family dynamic actively wants to look ethereal and untethered from reality on a day that is usually weighed down by, generational trauma,
Right.
that's not just a mood board. That is a psychological fortress. Weddings are theaters of control.
They really are.
Right. By curating every single detail down to exchanging last-minute Tiffany & Co. gold bands, having LL Bean goodie bags, walking down the aisle to an instrumental of Moon River.
Even signature pink Jell-O shots at the cellar.
Exactly. It's all a way of engineering absolute safety. Emma is crafting the exact secure bubble she needs.
So this hyper-focus on vintage perfection is basically a shield against the messy reality of her actual family dynamics.
Precisely. It sets the stage for who is explicitly kept on the outside of that bubble.
And that's a perfect transition, because wait until you hear what came next. Or rather, who didn't come at all. But hey, if you're loving these Hollywood twists so far, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
Yes, hit subscribe, because we have to talk about the glaring absence.
We do. The elephant in the room. Inside this perfect Idaho bubble, you have guests like Demi Moore and Kristen Stewart hanging out by a creek in 95-degree heat. And the person who walks Emma down the aisle is her 5-year-old son, Rhodes, who she shares with her ex, Garrett Hedlund.
Which is adorable. He was wearing a little white tuxedo to match her tea-stained gown.
So sweet. But outside the bubble, thousands of miles away, on the exact same day, 70-year-old Eric Roberts was photographed leaving a Crunch gym in L.A.
Just wearing a gray champion shirt and sweatpants.
Literally sweating it out at Crunch Gym while his daughter gets married. It's such a jarring split screen.
It really is. What's fascinating here is what happened when the media inevitably caught up with Eric just days later to ask him about it.
Oh, right. Because usually, this is where the ousted parent gives a tearful tabloid interview. They leverage the media to play the victim, talk about how cruel they're being treated.
Right, the classic Hollywood PR spin. But Eric's response to page 6 was completely devoid of that. He said, and I quote, "I love my daughter, always have, always will. It is perfectly wonderful for her to celebrate however she wants, with whomever she wants."
Wow. There's no bitterness there at all.
None. Psychologically speaking, it reads as a radical acceptance of his daughter's boundaries. He's acknowledging that her wedding is about her joy and her safety, not his ego.
He went to the gym instead of trying to crash the narrative.
Exactly, and that is incredibly difficult for a parent to do, to sit quietly in the consequence of their past actions.
I really want to pause and just ask you, the listener, right now, have you ever had to draw a hard, non-negotiable line with a family member? It's gut-wrenching, right?
Oh, totally.
You spend so much time bracing for their reaction, the guilt trip, the pushback. But sometimes the most loving thing the other person can do, the real proof of their growth, is when they just respect it and step back.
Yeah, and to understand why that hard line was drawn in the first place, we have to examine the history. And luckily, we don't really have to speculate.
Right, because of his book.
Yeah, Eric laid out the entire blueprint of his failures in his 2024 memoir, Runaway Train. He doesn't pull any punches at all.
The book is startlingly frank. I mean, we all know the broad strokes of the Roberts family drama, right? Like the long-standing rumor that Julia Roberts funded Kelly Cunningham's legal fees in this vicious custody battle to take Emma away from Eric.
Right, but Eric completely dismantles that media narrative in the memoir.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he clarifies there was no custody fight because he never contested it. He writes, "I never saw myself as someone who deserved to have physical custody of Emma, not in a million years. We both knew better than that."
That is striking self-awareness. He basically acknowledges that Julia didn't maliciously take a side against him. She just did the right thing by supporting Kelly and making sure Emma had a stable home.
Exactly. While he was spiraling, and he details the absolute depths of that spiral in the book, he admits to abandoning Kelly when Emma was just 7 months old.
7 months.
Yeah. He says he couldn't handle the realities of an infant, and he couldn't handle being a parent. He writes very frankly about his severe struggle with drug addiction, admitting that it made him, quote, dangerous to be around during Emma's formative years.
And he calls losing custody of Emma the biggest consequence of his addiction. But, here's where it gets really interesting to me. The mechanism of addiction often gets overlooked, and it perfectly explains their current dynamic. Well, addiction fundamentally pauses emotional development, right?
Yeah.
And it shreds the parental timeline. By the time Eric was sober and actually capable of being present, the window for him to be a foundational father figure had closed.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Emma had already built the architecture of her life entirely without him.
And Eric seemingly understands that profound loss. He has a direct quote in the book where he admits, "I'm still not a father figure."
Wow.
He points out that Emma knows exactly what a parent is supposed to be because she's being that person to her own son, Rhodes. But he accepts he never filled that role for her.
Which causes major cultural friction, honestly. Because we live in a society that demands instant redemption arcs.
Oh, 100%.
The expectation is always you apologize, and then we get a tearful cinematic reunion. But Eric is using his memoir to publicly apologize while also stating he wants to move aside proudly and with grace.
He's acknowledging the damage and accepting the distance as the permanent consequence. But, and this is a big, but it's not a complete scorched earth cutoff.
Right. And later in the episode, we're going to talk about the shocking paradox and how they handle this. But if you are enjoying this deep dive, take a second to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next.
Yes, please do. Because the mechanics of their current relationship are incredibly complex. There is still affection there.
You really hear it in his recent podcast appearances, like when he went on Really Famous with Cara Mayer Robinson.
Oh, that interview was so touching. He shared this memory of the moment Emma was born. He recalled singing happy birthday to her to stop her from crying and how she tried to find his face. Yeah, he called it the most complete moment of his life, adding, "It was magic and I'll always have that." And throughout the whole interview, he just keeps repeating, "I'm so proud of my daughter."
And this is the crazy part, in that same breath, on that same podcast,
Yeah.
he admits that Emma has specifically asked him not to talk about her publicly.
Right.
Like, she allows him to interact with her on social media, so the channel is open, but she drew a hard boundary around discussing their relationship with the media.
And when the podcast host pressed him on how complicated that must be, Eric pushed back. He introduced this concept of what he called outside eyes.
Outside eyes.
Yeah. He argued their relationship is only complicated through outside eyes because the public doesn't get any of it. He basically claims the media is operating on dramatic fantasies, while their private reality is much simpler.
Okay, I have to jump in here, because this logic feels entirely contradictory to me.
How do you mean?
Well, Eric says he takes full responsibility. But if you dedicate a chapter to your daughter in a published memoir and you discuss her on a widely distributed podcast, directly after admitting she asked you not to talk about her, how is that taking responsibility?
That's a very fair point.
Isn't the public apology itself a blatant violation of the boundary she requested?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that contradiction is exactly what psychologists call the outside eyes paradox in celebrity culture. Eric is an actor. His entire life has been about processing emotion with an audience. He's trying to claim his own narrative and publicly fall on his sword. But his public apology, through the memoir, is basically like trying to put out a fire in your daughter's house by throwing a bucket of water through a closed window.
Oh, wow.
The intention is to help, the water is genuine, but the method completely shatters the glass. He is violating the very perimeter she put up to keep herself safe.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. The bucket of water through a closed window. It just highlights this painful truth about estrangement. But what is deeply healing for one person can be incredibly triggering for the other.
Exactly. It's a collision of coping mechanisms. Eric copes by getting it all out in the open. Emma copes by keeping the perimeter entirely secure. For her, privacy is safety.
And you see the physical manifestation of that secure perimeter in who actually made the guest list for the wedding. Because the family that did show up tells a story just as powerful as the family that didn't.
Yes. Let's talk about who was there. Julia Roberts attended with her husband, Danny Mutter. And Julia has always been a massive pillar of stability for Emma and her mother, Kelly Cunningham.
Emma has talked extensively about her bonds with Julia. They even acted together in movies like Valentine's Day. But it's interesting because Emma has also been super candid about how witnessing the reality of Julia's fame up close was a deterrent.
Really?
Yeah, she mentioned in an interview once that seeing Julia's intense, blinding level of fame was actually scary for her as a kid.
Which perfectly reinforces everything we've been discussing about Emma's desire for a curated, controlled life.
Exactly.
She saw the chaos of addiction from her father, and she saw the chaos of megastardom from her aunt. Her response was to build a life where she dictates exactly who gets in.
And the most important figure who got in, who has literally always been in, is her mother, Kelly. Emma continually disgrades Kelly as her biggest inspiration.
When you zoom out and look at the photos from that weekend in Sun Valley, the visual narrative is it's incredibly profound.
It really is.
You have Emma, surrounded by the strong, stable women who stepped in to raise her when Eric's addiction created a void. You have Kelly and Julia, the architects of her survival. And then, at the center of it all, replacing the traditional role of the father giving the bride away, is her son, Rhodes.
That detail is the emotional anchor of this entire story.
Yeah.
Because remember, Eric explicitly noted in his book that Emma is a great mother to Rhodes.
Yes.
She's actively being the parent to him that Eric was utterly incapable of being for her.
The wedding visually represented the breaking of generational trauma. Rhodes walking her down the aisle isn't just, a cute detail for a Vogue spread.
Yeah.
It's a powerful statement of moving forward. Emma is being escorted into her new marriage by the son she is raising with the exact stability and presence that she lacked. The cycle ends with her.
So what does this all mean? When we synthesize all these sources, the fashion spreads, the candid podcasts, the brutal honesty of the memoir, we aren't just looking at a story about a missing celebrity dad.
Not at all.
This is a deeply relatable case study in boundaries, accountability, and chosen family. It reminds you that you have the fundamental right to curate your own life's guest list. Just like Emma did, you get to decide who brings you peace and who needs to be loved from a safe distance.
And it really challenges this deeply ingrained cultural bias we hold about family dynamics. We are so conditioned to view estrangement as a failure, right?
Oh,
A
absolutely.
failure to stick together, a failure to forgive. But what if, in cases involving deep trauma and addiction, estrangement isn't a failure at all?
That's a great point.
What if Eric Roberts, choosing to sweat it out at a crunch gym in LA, silently respecting the boundary his daughter drew, while Emma marries in the mountains surrounded by absolute peace? What if that is actually the highest form of mutual respect?
Wow.
What if this immense distance is the absolute greatest success this specific father-daughter relationship could ever hope to achieve?
It completely flips the lens. You look back at that picture-perfect wedding album, and you realize the empty space where a father traditionally stands isn't a flaw in the picture. It's the very boundary that allowed the picture to be taken in the first place.
Perfectly said.
You've been listening to StarScope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.